When the fighting started, most of the embassies left very quickly. Our embassy stayed. Our embassy stayed because there were Indians in Khartoum. We have just completed the Operation Kaveri. If there's still somewhere some people still stuck, obviously we would make that additional effort. But remember, Operation Kaveri was not a one-off. It was a particularly complicated operation. For various reasons, we were hesitant to speak about it too much in public. It wasn't just probity and a sense of responsibility. I was actually genuinely worried that if we highlighted the predicament in which our people were, we would be putting them in danger. So during this period, from April 15th, when it started, we've been working very, I would say, efficiently, but very much with not too much details in the public domain. In many ways you can contrast it with some of the earlier operations. Now, in the case of Operation Kaveri, we brought back almost 4,000 people, and broadly about 11-12% of them were inhabitants of Karnataka state. This was done using the Air Force. There were 17 flights. We used the Navy. There were 5 sorties by ships. But having seen a series of these operations from 2015 when we did the Yemen Operation Rahat, actually this was the most dangerous operation. It was an operation where people put their lives at risk, where there were quite a few embassies in Khartoum. When the fighting started, most of the embassies left very quickly. Our embassy stayed. Our embassy stayed because there were Indians in Khartoum. And I finally had to, when all the Indians had left, even then my embassy was there. My embassy was there because my ambassador and his team had that sense of responsibility. They said, no, there's still people stuck in different places. And I finally, on the day when the ceasefire broke down, I actually had to order them saying, you're putting your lives at risk. Please relocate within Sudan. And the kind of challenges, and bit by bit, story will come out. You actually had an Air Force plane land at a, I would say, not an unprepared airstrip, but an airstrip which was not regularly functional, in very poor condition, where a plane previously coming in had been shot up, had been fired at and hit. And yet these people took the risk of landing there with very little help from the I think the air traffic controller was non-existent, I think, if my understanding is right. So they landed there in a sense using old-fashioned skills, taking a big chance. And to me, whether the courage shown by the people landing was only matched with the courage shown by the embassy staff on the ground, who had rounded up the people and taken them there through very difficult circumstances so that they could be very quickly loaded on the plane, and the embassy people came back, and those who left. Now I say this to you because sitting here, and sometimes, as I said, there are times we can speak about it, we can share details. There are times when people need to trust the government, need to understand today that this is a government which has systems in place, which has a commitment to citizens abroad. So, in fact, when Sudan, the fighting started, I was myself traveling. And within a matter of a few hours, the Prime Minister contacted me. He wanted to, I was in Africa at that time. contacted me. He wanted to confirm. We had set up a crisis management group. Our systems were coming in place. We were reaching out through the ambassadors to all the countries concerned, and that we were getting the Air Force and the Navy ready for movement for all of this to happen. Now, the whole operation was actually hugely complex. I mean, I'm speaking of 17 flights and 5 ships, but that is the final end of the operation that you are seeing. Actually, the people out there, the team handling it, had to hire buses, get petrol in the black market because the petrol, fuel was very difficult. Had to negotiate checkpoints. I think some of you would have seen stories in the newspaper of what the people who came out. They spoke about being threatened, about being robbed, about being assaulted. Whatever they went through, those who stayed behind took much more than that. And yet it was their job to keep it running. And, during this period, I would say maybe we hired 60 to 70 buses. And people actually, the last lot of people traversed through the length of Sudan to finally reach the port through a very long route because they were avoiding the fighting. And we had another team which had to come from, we had people from Nigeria come to Chad and extricate people from the western side of Sudan.